Milo, the sleepy mouse. Once upon a time, in a bustling little village hidden beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree, lived a small, cheerful mouse named Milo. He had soft gray fur, bright beady eyes, and an adventurous spirit. But what Milo loved most of all was cheese creamy, crumbly, aged, or fresh. And there was no better event to celebrate cheese than the grand annual Cheese Festival, a feast that all the mice in the village eagerly awaited. This year, Milo was especially excited. The festival would feature a giant cheese wheel at the center of the village, and the mice would nibble away at it together. There would be games, music, and best of all, a cheese tasting contest. Milo dreamed of taking the first bite of the legendary Kalsoner Gouda, a cheese so rich and delicious that even the oldest mice in the village spoke of it with reverence. One sunny afternoon, as Milo dashed through the meadows collecting herbs for his favorite cheese recipe, he heard a soft giggle behind him. He turned quickly, his whiskers twitching, but saw nothing. Shrugging, he continued picking herbs. Then, poof! A small burst of sparkling green light appeared before him, and out of thin air a tiny fairy emerged. She had shimmering wings, wild curly hair, and a mischievous glint in her emerald eyes. She fluttered before Milo and smirked. "Why, hello there, little mouse," she said in a sing-song voice. Milo blinked in surprise. "Oh, I've never met a fairy before. What brings you here?" The fairy twirled in the air, her wings leaving a trail of glittering dust. "I was just passing by, looking for a bit of fun. And you, my dear Milo, look like the perfect little creature to play with," Milo chuckled. "Play? I love games. Do you want a race? Or maybe a game of hide and seek?" The fairy's smile widened. "Oh no, I have a different kind of game in mind." She raised her tiny hands, and a swirl of sparkling dust surrounded Milo. He felt a strange sensation wash over him, a sudden heaviness in his limbs, a warm drowsiness creeping over his eyes. He wobbled on his tiny feet. What's happening?" he mumbled, swaying. The fairy giggled. "I've put a little spell on you, a sleepy spell. Now, you'll never know when you might doze off. Could be now, could be later. Who knows?" Milo gasped. "A sleepy spell? But why?" The fairy shrugged. "Because it's funny." She clapped her hands, vanishing in a swirl of green mist. Milo shook his head, trying to stay awake. "That's not funny at all," he called. But the fairy was gone. He rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath. Maybe it's just a silly trick, he told himself. I'll be fine. But as soon as he took a step forward, plah! He collapsed onto the soft grass, fast asleep. When he woke up, the sun had shifted in the sky. Oh no, he had dozed off for at least an hour. Panic bubbled in his chest. If this kept happening, how would he ever prepare for the festival? Determined, Milo rushed back to the village. But as soon as he reached the bakery, where his friend Pip was kneading dough for cheese biscuits, it happened again. "Milo, can you taste this batter? I think it needs more honey." Pip started, but Milo's eyelids drooped, his little nose twitched, and thud! He fell face first into the bowl of batter. "Milo! Milo!" Pip shook him awake, laughing. "Did you just fall asleep? In my batter?" Milo groggily sat up, batter dripping from his ears. "I think I've been cursed," he murmured. "Cursed?" Pip frowned. "By who?" "A fairy," Milo explained. "She put a sleepy spell on me, and now I keep dozing off at the worst times." Pip scratched his head. "That's not good! The festival is in 2 days! You can't sleep through it." "I know," Milo groaned. I have to find that fairy and break the spell before it's too late. Pip wiped the batter off Milo's nose and patted his back. Then you'd better hurry before you miss out on all the cheese. Milo gulped. The very thought of missing the cheese festival sent a shiver down his tail. He had to fix this, but before he could take another step, plop, he fell asleep once more. As Pip sighed and dragged Milo out of the batter bowl, the village bells chimed in the distance, signaling the countdown to the biggest cheese feast of the year. Would Milo be able to break the spell in time? One thing was certain. He couldn't do it alone. Milo woke up with a start. His fur was still sticky from Pip's batter, and the scent of honey lingered in his nose. The village square was bustling with activity. Mice scurried around, setting up decorations, stacking wheels of cheese, and preparing for the grand festival. But Milo couldn't enjoy any of it. He groaned and rubbed his eyes. I have to find that fairy before it's too late. Pip, who had been watching over him, nodded. Good idea, but maybe you should wash up first. Milo glanced at his reflection in a puddle. His whiskers were crusted with batter, and his fur clumped together in a sticky mess. He sighed. All right, but I have to be quick. As he made his way to the village fountain, he felt fine. Wide awake, even. Maybe the spell was wearing off. But just as he dipped his paws into the cool water, plop, his eyes shut, and he toppled forward, splashing straight into the fountain. A chorus of gasps, followed by laughter, erupted from the nearby mice. Milo, are you taking a nap or a bath? Someone joked. Milo jolted awake, coughing up water. Ugh, this spell is the worst. Pip pulled him out, shaking his head. You're going to need a plan if you keep dropping like that. Milo gritted his teeth. I don't have time for a plan. I need to find that fairy. Now. But before he could go, a familiar voice called, Milo, we need your help. It was Rosie, the village baker. She stood in front of her stall, flour dusting her apron. I need an extra pair of paws to help stack the cheese wheels. Can you lend a hand? Milo hesitated. He was in a hurry, but Rosie had always been kind to him. Besides, if he could stay busy, maybe he wouldn't fall asleep. Of course. Rosie led him to a tall stack of cheese wheels. We need to move these over there, she said, pointing to a long table where mice were setting up the cheese tasting contest. Milo picked up a cheese wheel, carefully balancing it as he walked. He took one step, then another. He was doing great. Maybe, just maybe, he could... Plop! His eyes shut mid-step, and he collapsed right onto the cheese wheel, rolling forward like a runaway ball. Watch out! Rosie cried. Milo tumbled through the square, knocking over baskets, bumping into stalls, and finally, crash! Landing right in the middle of a fruit cart. Apples and pears rained down around him. Dizzy, he sat up and groaned. That went well. Rosie rushed over, helping him up. Milo, what's going on? I keep falling asleep, he admitted, shaking fruit peels off his fur. A fairy put a spell on me, and I can't control it. Rosie frowned. That's awful. You have to break the spell before the festival. It wouldn't be the same without you. Milo sighed. I know, but I don't even know where to look. Just then, the village's wise old owl, Oliver, fluttered down from his perch. He adjusted his tiny spectacles and ruffled his feathers. Did I hear something about a fairy spell? Milo's ears perked up. Yes! Oliver, do you know where I can find her? Oliver closed his eyes in thought. Mischievous fairies like to hide in places full of light and magic. The glowing meadow. At the edge of the forest is a favorite spot. He peered down at Milo. But beware, fairies don't like to undo their tricks so easily. You may have to prove yourself. Milo gulped. Prove myself? How? Oliver's eyes twinkled. That, my dear mouse, is something you'll have to discover on your own. Milo took a deep breath. This was it, the clue he needed. If he could find the fairy, he could convince her to break the spell. Pip clapped a paw on Milo's back. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go to the glowing meadow. Milo smiled, determination filling his heart. Yes, but first, he swayed on his feet, eyelids drooping. Pip's eyes widened. No, stay with me, Milo. But it was too late. Plop! Milo fell asleep again, snoring softly against a pile of fallen apples. Pip groaned. This is going to be harder than I thought. As the festival preparations continued, Milo's time was running out. He had to reach the fairy before the big day. Or he might just sleep through the most important event of his life. Milo woke up with a jolt. The sky had darkened slightly, the golden glow of the evening sun stretching across the village. Pip stood beside him, arms crossed, tail twitching impatiently. You dozed off again. Pip sighed. We really need to hurry. Milo shook his head to clear the lingering drowsiness. He had to fight this. Right, the glowing meadow. Let's go before I fall asleep again. With determination, Milo and Pip scurried toward the forest, following the winding dirt path that led to the meadow. As they walked, fireflies flickered in the distance, guiding them like tiny lanterns. The deeper they went, the more the air shimmered with magic. The grass sparkled with tiny specks of glowing pollen, and soft humming sounds filled the air. Pip shivered. Are we sure this is a good idea? Milo took a deep breath. It's the only idea. Suddenly, a gust of wind swirled around them, carrying a familiar giggle. Poof. Green sparkles exploded in the air, and there she was, the mischievous fairy, twirling in the sky above them. Well, she said with a smirk. Back so soon, sleepy mouse? Milo crossed his arms. I have to break this spell before the festival. You have to help me? The fairy grinned. Oh, but where's the fun in that? You've been so entertaining, rolling into carts, falling into fountains. I haven't laughed this much in years. Pip glared at her. It's not funny. He's gonna miss the cheese festival because of you. The fairy tapped her chin playfully. I suppose I could lift the spell. If Milo proves he's worthy. Milo's ears perked up. I'll do anything. The fairy clapped her hands. Wonderful. 3 challenges. 3 chances to stay awake. If you pass, I'll break the spell. If not, well, sweet dreams. Milo gulped. This was it. Challenge 1, the spinning log. With another wave of her hand, the fairy summoned a long wooden log, balanced over a tiny stream. Walk across without falling asleep, she said. Milo took a deep breath and stepped onto the log. The moment he started moving, the log spun beneath his paws. He wobbled, arms flailing. He was so focused on balancing that he almost forgot about the spell. But as he reached the middle, his eyelids grew heavy. No, not now, Milo muttered. He bit his tongue lightly to stay awake, forced his paws forward, and jump! Landed safely on the other side. The fairy pouted. Lucky mouse. Challenge 2. The riddle of the stars. The fairy snapped her fingers, and glowing stars appeared in the sky, rearranging themselves into shapes. Solve my riddle, she said. Or take a nap? She pointed at the stars, which formed a triangle, then shifted into a circle. I have no legs but can still run. What am I? Milo blinked. His mind was foggy with sleep, but he had to focus. No legs, but can run. A river, he shouted. The stars shimmered and burst into golden dust. The fairy huffed. Fine, but you still have one more challenge. The fairy's wings fluttered and a soft, soothing melody filled the air. The trees swayed gently as if cradling Milo in a warm embrace. Sleep pulled at his body like a heavy blanket. His vision blurred. His paws felt weak. He swayed, almost drifting off. Milo! Pip's voice rang through the air. Think of the cheese festival! Think of the golden Gouda! Milo gasped, snapping out of the trance. Cheese! He shook his head violently and forced himself to stay standing. The lullaby stopped. The fairy crossed her arms, defeated. Ugh, you win. With a flick of her wrist, the green glow around Milo faded. He gasped. It's gone? The spell is gone? The fairy sighed. Yes, now go enjoy your silly festival. Milo beamed. Thank you. I mean, even if you caused a lot of trouble, I guess it was an adventure. The fairy smirked. That's the spirit. And with a wink. Poof! She was gone. Milo turned to Pip, grinning. Let's go home. We have a festival to celebrate. The sun was just beginning to rise as Milo and Pip hurried back to the village. The moment they stepped onto the cobbled streets, the scent of fresh bread and melted cheese filled the air. Colorful banners fluttered in the morning breeze, and mice bustled around, making final preparations for the cheese festival. Milo grinned, feeling lighter than he had in days. The fairy's spell was finally broken. No more sudden naps, no more embarrassing tumbles, just a perfect day ahead. You actually did it, Pip said, shaking his head in amazement. I was sure you'd fall asleep during that last challenge. Milo chuckled. So was I, but when you mentioned cheese, I couldn't let myself miss the festival. Just then, Rosie, the baker, spotted them and rushed over. Milo, you're awake, she said, wiping flour off her paws. I was worried you'd sleep through the whole thing. Not a chance, Milo said proudly. I had a spell to break. And I did, Rosie blinked. A spell? Pip waved a paw. Long story. Let's just say a very mischievous fairy gave Milo the worst case of sleepiness ever. Rosie laughed. Well, I'm glad you're back to normal. We need your help. The cheese tower competition is about to start, and we need the best cheese stacker in the village. Milo's chest puffed with pride. He loved the cheese tower competition. It was all about carefully stacking as many cheese wheels as possible without the tower toppling over. In previous years, he had always placed in the top 3, but this time, he wanted to win. I'm ready, Milo said with a determined nod. The village square was packed with mice gathering around the competition area. At the center stood a long table lined with wheels of cheese, cheddar, Gouda, brie, and even the rare golden Gouda, the most prized cheese in the village. The mayor, a plump gray mouse with a golden sash, stepped forward. Welcome everyone to this year's cheese festival, he announced. We have many exciting events today, but first, the cheese tower competition. A cheer rose from the crowd as Milo and the other contestants took their places. The rules were simple. Each mouse had 5 minutes to stack as many cheese wheels as possible without letting their tower collapse. The tallest, most stable tower would win the golden Gouda trophy. Milo took a deep breath. I can do this. I just have to stay focused. The mayor rang the starting bell, and the competition began. Milo carefully lifted a large wheel of cheddar and placed it on the table. Then a wheel of Gouda. Then another. His paws moved swiftly but steadily, stacking each cheese with precision. Around him, the other mice worked just as hard, their towers growing taller and taller. Halfway through the competition, Milo glanced at his tower. It was taller than Pip. He grinned, but then, wobble. The cheese stack swayed slightly. Milo's breath caught. If it toppled now, he would lose. He steadied himself, carefully adjusting the top wheel. No distractions. No mistakes. The final seconds ticked down. 3, 2, 1, stop! Milo pulled his paws away just in time. His tower stood tall. 12 cheese wheels high. The mayor walked down the line, inspecting each stack. Some had already fallen, and others weren't as tall. Finally, he reached Milo's. "Amazing work, Milo," the mayor said. "Your tower is the tallest, and it's completely stable. That means..." He raised his arms. "Milo is this year's champion." The crowd erupted into cheers. Pip tackled Milo in excitement. "You did it, and without falling asleep once!" Milo laughed. "That's a new record for me." Rosie handed him the Golden Gouda Trophy, a shining cheese-shaped award. "You earned this, Milo, and after all the trouble you've been through, I'd say you deserve an extra slice of cheese, too." Milo grinned as she passed him a piece of fresh, gooey Gouda. He took a bite, savoring the flavor. This was the best cheese festival ever. As the celebration continued, Pip nudged him. "So what did you learn from all this?" Milo thought for a moment, then smiled. "That sometimes challenges make us stronger. Even when things seem impossible, if we stay determined and have good friends by our side, we can overcome anything." Pip nodded. "And that cheese is the ultimate motivation." Milo laughed. "That too." As the sun set over the village, Milo sat back, watching the festival lights twinkle in the night. No more sudden naps, no more fairy tricks, just good food, great friends, and a lesson he would never forget. And with that, the sleepy mouse was sleepy no more.